watch how the third quarter goes down. At least they called this one. A'ja Wilson creams Lexie Hull like she did 5 times in game 1. Peggy Hammock get 15 calls in a row and one goes another way and she starts screaming and crying. A'ja Wilson doesn't like Lexie Hull. She's always pushing her, but that's an illegal screen, and then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul.
The Indiana Fever just watched Game 2 slip away, not because they were outmatched, but because the refs tilted the floor toward the Las Vegas Aces. 41 fouls, 16 in 1 quarter alone. Players thrown to the ground. Whistles flying non-stop. Yet somehow A'ja Wilson's stat line got the spotlight, while Lexie Hull battled through a back injury from Game 1. That wasn't basketball, it was chaos disguised as defense. Still, the Fever fought back through it all and showed heart. Now the question is, what happens when the series shifts back to Indiana? Drop a comment to show support. Let's go, Lexie. Let's go.
I mean, it feels like a physical game every game. Feels like it's been a physical season. But yes, I think, I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far. But we just keep getting back up. So that's all you can really say.
How did Indiana walk into Las Vegas, face the reigning 2-time champs, deal with whistles leaning the wrong way, and still walk out with a double-digit win? Game 1 wasn't just a victory. It was a statement to the entire league. The Fever opened with a poise rarely seen in such a young squad. From a jump, Kelsey Mitchell erased outs, torching the scoreboard with a playoff career-high 34 points. Every Vegas run was met with Indiana's steady response. No panic, no wasted possessions, just discipline and control. The Fever dictated tempo, and in doing so, they flipped the pressure back onto the champs.
Take that! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! That's one! That's one! That's one! Yeah! Even good! Yeah! They ain't song and dance to me, man. I'm just grateful. I love basketball. I love playing on my team. So let's take what we can get.
And then came the Aces' supposed trump card. A'ja Wilson, the MVP, endured a nightmare shooting night. Just 6 makes on 22 attempts. 6. Indiana's defense swarmed her, contesting every look, clogging lanes, and forcing her to grind for every point. That was the difference. One team executing with sharp precision and discipline, while the powerhouse champs stumbled, unable to find rhythm on their own home floor. The Fever owned the moment.
A'ja Wilson, look at that foul they called for her. Yeah, saved her. That's a bull crap. I love Aaliyah Boston. Great job today playing defense. Look at that. Another foul. Bailed out by the refs. I get pissed off. This is the worst one. They call this a jump ball. How is that a jump ball? Nobody even had possession. Aaliyah Boston, that's anything. It's over the back. Not a jump ball.
What stung Vegas most was the context. At home, with the whistle tilting their way and national coverage already predicting a cakewalk. Instead, Indiana stood tall and stormed out with a 16-point blowout. Fans quickly spotted the cracks. The foul count looked suspicious, even in victory. Yet the magnitude of the Fever's win drowned out complaints. The bias wasn't invisible, it was just overshadowed. Because when Indiana handled business that decisively, excuses no longer mattered. The champs had been exposed.
A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to finish.
That humiliation lit a fire under the Aces. Losing by 16 wasn't something they could just brush off, so they stormed into Game 2 determined to flip the script. The real question wasn't if Vegas would respond, but how far they'd push it. And at what cost? Was Game 2 even basketball, or just a brawl disguised as playoff intensity? From the opening tip, it was obvious. The Aces weren't interested in playing clean. They wanted to set a tone, no matter how messy.
WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like, you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in while the offensive player is trying to get the rebound. But we know Asia Wilson only receives fouls.
The Aces came out swinging, arms flying and bodies colliding on nearly every possession, while the officials failed to set any control. What should have been a showcase of two elite teams quickly unraveled into a foul fest, 41 whistles in total. 16 came in the third quarter alone, a stretch where Indiana couldn't build any rhythm. Every spark of momentum was chopped apart by constant stoppages, and strangely, those breaks always seemed to tilt in the same direction.
So why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
The physicality wasn't random. It defined the entire game. Cuts through the lane turned into shoves. Defense relied more on forearms than footwork. More than once, a player wound up on the floor. The foul count wasn't the only issue. It was how those calls disrupted Indiana's rhythm. The Fever thrive on flow, ball movement, and pace, but instead they were dragged into a wrestling match they never asked for. Vegas piled up free throws while Indiana was stuck grinding through choppy half-court possessions, forced to play in the exact style that takes them furthest from their strengths.
Obviously, you were a late add to the injury report today. Just how are you feeling this morning with your back, and what do you have to do to be able to play? I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. A lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, getting me ready for tonight.
Lexie Hull probably shouldn't have even suited up. After injuring her back in Game 1, she was a game-time decision. Most players would have sat, healed, and waited for the series to shift home. Instead, she taped herself up, stepped on the floor, and instantly became a target for Vegas's physical style. Possession after possession, she absorbed bumps, contact, and hard landings. But rather than break, Hull responded by stepping behind the arc and drilling 5 three-pointers, tying a Fever playoff record. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't pretty, but it was defiant. Afterward, she admitted, "I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get our bodies as ready as we can be. We're just pushing through." That's not a soundbite built for hype. It's a glimpse into a competitor refusing to fold, even when her body is screaming at her to stop.
What happened? They cut it to 8 and they get 4 fouls in a row. That was not a foul. That was not a foul. This is crazy. 4 consecutive fouls. So from 8, it goes to 13 really quick, and the rest was history. It looks like Howard got hit in the arm by 2 players. They don't call fouls, a shot clock. But the rest of the game were just a whole bunch of fouls being called, people flying.
National chatter didn't center on Hull's toughness or the Fever's fight to extend their season. Instead, it spotlighted Aya Wilson's box score: 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 steals, 2 blocks. Those numbers made every headline. What slipped through the cracks was how she piled them up, muscling into the lane, dishing out contact, and benefiting from whistles Indiana rarely received. Viewers saw it and called it out, but the story still got framed as dominance. And sure, Wilson was productive, but dominance isn't the same thing as fairness when half of Indiana's starters limped off the floor by the final buzzer.
How you look at it, honestly, by some of the fouls and the way it was going, it looks like we were almost too physical, but yet at the same time, I feel like we have to be able to get that on the other end. I think, sometimes when you just look at the game as a whole, when you look at the way that it works, sometimes you really manipulate it to different ways and you have smaller matchups. So, I just don't think it's really possible all the time for some of those smaller matchups to really do doing such a clean job of that. But hey, I'm here to hoop, so none of my business.
Aaliyah Boston lived that grind on nearly every trip down the floor. She finished with 10 points and 13 rebounds, but each stat seemed to come at the cost of a body shot, an elbow to the ribs, a shove in the back. Paint touches that should have drawn whistles turned into silence. What's overlooked is that Boston's only in her third season, yet already playing with veteran composure. Against the Aces, she wasn't granted an inch. Rather than protest, she battled through every collision. Her final line looked steady on paper, but in reality, it was pure survival just to post those numbers.
Lexie Hull kept her out of that space as much as she would have wanted to. She did end up with 19 points.
7-0. Aces run has been stopped. Sims.
While the headlines centered on the stars, Odyssey Sims quietly kept Indiana alive. She poured in 18 points despite dribbling through double teams, absorbing hacks to her arms, and having any rhythm chopped up by random whistles. Time and again, Sims salvaged broken possessions with tough buckets, only to see momentum erased seconds later. Her frustration was obvious, yet she never backed off. Every shove Vegas delivered, Sims answered with scoring, refusing to let the fever fold under the chaos.
Now on Young. Sims over. Asia Wilson, she had to put some extra arc on that.
Game 2 wasn't about Indiana falling short. It was about them being denied the chance to actually play. The effort was there. Hull drilling threes, Boston fighting for rebounds, Sims carving out drives. But every push forward was chopped down by a whistle or a shove. The Aces didn't expose some fatal flaw in the Fever system. They leaned into chaos, stacked up fouls, and rode that storm to the WNBA. How did Indiana lose? It wasn't about who played cleaner basketball. Without constant interruptions, their poise and shot-making could have shifted the result. The real story is twofold. Officiating tilted Vegas's way, and the Aces adjusted strategically. The biggest adjustment? Kelsey Mitchell. In Game 1, Mitchell exploded for 34 points, scoring every way imaginable, catch and shoot, off the dribble, slicing to the rim. By Game 2, Vegas had one mission: shut her down. They swarmed her with bodies, smothered every catch, and squeezed the floor until she had nowhere to operate. Mitchell finished with just 13 points, not because she lost her touch, but because Vegas made her the centerpiece of their defensive scheme. That tactical shift, paired with the whistle's constant interruptions, completely flipped the series dynamic. Would you like me to make this tighter and punchier, closer to 150 words, or keep the layered storytelling style?
Step on that note with Kelsey just having a little bit of a, they were able to compete a little bit more. How did you feel like they were able to be successful in that regard?
I mean, the physicality won. She's like a little pinball. I know that the museum's right down the street, so sometimes I feel like she's getting pinged around everywhere.